The war on drugs began during Nixon's presidency. He passed the Controlled Substances Act in 1971 and created the Drug Enforcement Agency. Then, in the 1980s, the crack cocaine epidemic started. This was overstated and really was only in black ghettos of some major cities. However, what really kickstarted the war on drugs was the death of famous basketball player Len Bias. This caused huge media attention and public outcry over his death, which was due to an overdose. And this led Congress to be able to pass strict legislation to stop the drug crisis. Reagan passed the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986, and this was the first time legislation targeted individual users instead of big traffickers, and this had huge consequences. The Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986 established a minimum mandatory sentence for 500 grams of powder cocaine at 5 years. Yet the mandatory minimum for only 5 grams of crack cocaine was also 5 years. This set the ratio of powder cocaine to crack for the same sentence at 100-1. At the time, the reasoning was that crack was more addictive and led to more violent behavior than powder cocaine, when in reality they are essentially the same drug and there was no science behind it. This was really what shifted the war on drugs to targeting black and brown people, and this sentencing disparity led to the mass incarceration of people of color that's happening today. Images of black and brown people as addicted and dangerous have been pushed for decades, and these images led to stricter and disproportionate drug policies and punishments targeted towards those communities. In 1990s, opioids flooded the healthcare system, addicting middle-class white people in the suburbs. In stark contrast with black addicts, these addicts were treated as victims and sent to treatment more often than prison.
Addiction was a black problem. There was no wave of national compassion. Instead, we were warned of super predators, young, faceless black men wearing bandanas and sagging jeans. No matter how far from our lives crack was, we're guilty by association. By the time I was in college in the early 1990s, my short dreadlocks meant older women would cross the street to avoid me. African Americans were cast as pathological.
Then, the 1994 crime bill was passed. This did many things, including providing $12.5 billion in grants to build or expand correctional facilities. It incentivized states to grow their prisons and impose stricter punishments.
The bill promised states billions in federal construction money if they implemented truth in sentencing laws to ensure criminals serve out most of their sentences. And by 1999, most states had changed or adapted their laws.
Some historians argue that this 1994 crime bill did not cause mass incarceration, that state and prison populations were rising long before, as well as the number of black men being incarcerated. Even though state and prison populations were rising before 1994, this crime bill harshly exacerbated this rise by incentivizing prison growth and making it a bipartisan effort. This added to the mass incarceration problem started by the Anti-Drug Abuse Act that is still happening today.
On Earth, the country has 5% of the world's population, but nearly a quarter of all its prisoners. African American men are 6 times more likely to be incarcerated than white men. And African American men under 35 without a high school diploma are more likely to be imprisoned than employed in the labor market. Nearly 6 million former felons are denied the right to vote. That means 1 in 40 adults are disenfranchised, and 1 in 13 African Americans don't have a voice at the ballot box.
On top of this, a lot of those who are incarcerated are parents. The children of parents who are incarcerated are more likely to be involved in gangs or substance abuse, causing a cycle that is repeated through generations. These children also experience psychological conditions like depression, and many families that were broken by incarceration are poor, causing kids to end up in bad foster systems. War on drugs started mass incarceration in the U.S., and then the 1994 crime bill worsened it. The U.S. has the highest number of people incarcerated in the world, disproportionately black and brown. This causes generational, detrimental cycles of poverty and incarceration in black communities that are visible today.